So we now have Dr. Bruno Pedreira joining us. He's from University of Tennessee. So Dr. Pedreira received his master's and his PhD degrees from University of São Paulo. And then currently he's a associate professor and the director of the University of Tennessee Beef and Forage Center. Through his career, he has been involved in developing management practices for forage systems. He worked with modeling forage crop responses, and also he has been really involved with silvopasture systems in different types of systems, even in rotations. So I'm sure he's going to talk a little more about that. And Dr. Fike already alluded to this, but so Dr. Pedreira is going to be talking about environmental benefits and animal health benefits of using silvopasture systems. So Dr. Pedreira, thank you so much for being here with us today. The floor is yours.
Great, Liliane. Thank you so much for having me here. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Good, excellent. Thanks for the introduction. After Dr. Fike here, I'll do my best to do not overlap too much, but I would say that it'll be more like kind of watching a new movie with a different actor, right? We will go through basically the same stuff here, but with a little bit of different perspective. And I think every time we are talking about a such subject, most of our experience come with it, right? So I will try to share with you guys today more of my experience on this and try to share you what are my thoughts when I'm thinking about silvopasture systems. And also Liliane asked me to be more in the animal side of it and the environmental benefits on this. And that's where I will try to keep myself a little bit more here with you guys today. So John already gave me really nice, floor here. He set the ground with you guys. And as you guys can see, we have pretty much the same view in what we are calling silvopasture systems, right? It's not only such place that you just let the animals go in. We want to understand these as a truly system, a truly association among trees, pastures, animals that we are targeting more than just increased productivity. We want to see more ecosystem services. We want to see that sustainability coming with this whole thing, right? And also, when we talk about this, we need to understand that silvopasture systems, they have been proposed as a way to intensify livestock production systems, right? And everything that comes with this idea that we are going to get more or do more, it does not ever comes with the same idea that's going to be easier, right? I think that's a main thing here with silvopasture systems. As well as when we talk about rotational grazing instead of continuous grazing, when you decide to feed your animals with something different, it always requires from us to have a different perspective and to work different with that system. So with that said, John already mentioned as well, forage-based livestock systems and trees, we just do not start to work with it yet, right? It's a millennia-old practice. We have been doing it all over the world in several countries, in several parts of the world. We know that from a long-term perspective. Here, especially in the Western U.S., we have a lot of numbers and people talking about it, especially about grazing woodlands since 1800s. So we have been doing this for a while. The point is, what we were doing 100 years ago, and what exactly we are looking from now on when we are talking about silvopasture systems. And my understanding is, and if you go to the literature and try to read what we had there, written in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s in terms of silvopasture, it was basically woodland that we were trying to just bring animals in because grasses there were considered like weeds. So in order to fight weeds, we were releasing animals in the woods, right? And that was fine, and that still may be fine for some people nowadays if you just want to reduce the amount of forest you have in your woodland. But I think we have been discussing here to do something a little bit, better than this, a little bit more complex than this. And if you go and try to understand the potential impact of it in the US, you will find that we have more than 73 million acres of woodland in the whole US. So we can just turn animals in and use it a little bit. And that comes from the USDA census from the last one we had here. And a third of that woodland, we have some animals grazing there. Just here in Tennessee, where I am at the University of Tennessee, for the whole state, we have more than 1 million acres in woodland, and we could be grazing part of it at least and working on this area with a little bit more efficiency rather than just having this as woodlands and going there every 10 years, 15, 20 years and take some money out of this, right? We can see that only in the state of Tennessee, we can beneficiate more than 28,000 farmers that they have some woodland there and they could be able to use it if they did it in a more professional way, let's put it this way. And then, okay, assuming that we have it, assuming that we can do things like this, assuming that all of these may be helpful, I think the main question is the why. Why am I going to go into these woods, right? Why I'm going to get in trouble like this? So I'm also the 5th generation of livestock farmers in my family. So every time I'm thinking about silvopasture systems, I'm always thinking also under the animal perspective. Is it better for them? How much does it help me in terms of growing more livestock, making in order of creating an environment that will be better for my animals? So shade for livestock is the first thing that comes to my mind when I'm thinking about silvopasture systems. We can also include in it, increasing species richness, diversity of products, and at the end of the day, try to get a greater utilization of the existing farm woodland, but also be able to better work in my forage production when I'm thinking with a livestock mindset. Okay. With that said, silvopasture systems are considered an alternative to the traditional, right? Well, what can we call traditional? That specialized systems that we have in terms of beef, grains, or milk production. So silvopasture system here will try to combine product and ecological diversification. I think that's the main thing. We are going into a second level. We are getting out of the monoculture of trees or the monoculture of forage that we are using for livestock. And now we are bringing that diversification. We are bringing a new system to the table that will be need to be thinking and how you balance out things here. Am I leaning more towards my livestock? Am I leaning towards my forest? Because my understanding is that if you were working with silvopasture systems, you may be able to lean towards livestock or lean towards forest a little bit. And at the end of the day, we all want to pay the bills, right? My mindset is always a little bit livestock driven than more tree driven here. So when I'm thinking about what can I do in order to build my silvopasture system and create something good there, the first thing I want to find as a good reason to do it is heat stress, right? I think that's the why here. How can I handle heat stress? And John just showed to you guys the weather maps there and how the weather has been changing. And you may be in Virginia with an Alabama weather in maybe in a decade, in 20 years. I don't know where we are going with this kind of weather changing thing. But heat stress has been causing problems in several places all around the world, right? And when we think about beef or dairy cattle, we want to have our animals from 41 to 77 degree Fahrenheit. Every time we are below this or above this, that's the optimal range. When we go out of the range, we have our animals growing, well, being raised in a situation that is not ideal for them, right? And how does it matter? It matters because when we have high temperatures, the animals will not be performing as they are supposed to be, and they will be under what we call heat stress. And it will depend, first of all, in the environmental factors that we have there. And shade is one of the things that we need to think about. Access to water, relative humidity, what kind of diet these animals are going through. So all of these things put it together will help us to understand a little bit on how to, the heat stress is stressing my animals at a point that I'm losing money instead of being making money. Before I moved to Tennessee, I worked in Kansas for almost 3 years. And one of the things that I didn't find there was trees, right? There is no trees in Kansas and just very few there. And I had summers there that we lost animals in some of the properties. I was working with some of the farmers, and they kind of consider it kind of normal within the system because it's, July is hot. Some of the animals may not be adapted. My question here is if you were losing a single animal for heat stress, that animal is dead, okay? It's dying due heat stress. How many animals are you having that are not performing well because they are under heat stress? The death is just the end of the process, right? And sometimes we will face it, but we are not realizing how many other animals we are having there with so much stress that they are not performing as they are supposed to be performing for you. So just to have an idea in terms of water requirements, if you go from 70 to 90 Fahrenheit in terms of weather and environmental temperature, or ambient temperature, you can increase 38% just the water requirement for that as such animal. So if water is not available, if they don't have enough that animals can take it, it's another issue, right? So yeah, let's make clear that we understand that environment takes a lot when we are talking about livestock. And if affect the animals, if affect the way the animals are being raised there, it will also affect the reproductive efficiency. And that's what we have a lot in the southern U.S., from Tennessee up to Florida, right? Going through all of the Carolinas and Georgia and Alabama. We have a lot of the cow-calf operation of the whole country is here and around us. So if you think that 35 to 50% of a beef cattle can fail to become pregnant after the first insemination, and from 50 to 70% in terms of dairy, it tells a lot to us, okay? So reproductive efficiency, it is a major challenge. And you can find a lot of reasons to justify why you're having a fail insemination. But I can tell you, there is a lot of these that is body temperature related. Animals under a lot of stress, under a lot of heat, running in pastures without trees or in situations that they do not have any access to shade, they may be even more in trouble. So if you're thinking a week with a 7-day forecast like this from 70s to 90s, you can imagine the amount of heat stress that we are going to have, elevated body temperature, either for cows or heifers. And we have data, for example, telling us that when we go from 70 to 90 Fahrenheit, you can see the pregnant rate coming from more than 50% to lower than 15%. So yes, how can I also look at the silvopasture system and say, yes, I understood everything that John said. It's great to the environment. It's great to the whole system overall. But it is really amazing for all of the animals that are being raised in there, right? When we think about being challenged with temperatures, you can see that either for cows and bulls, we can impact a lot of, some parts of the reproductive tract for cows. It can change your embryo transfer rates. You can impact all of this. And when we're thinking about the males, when we're thinking on the bulls, it impairs sperm production, sperm morphology, motility. It can change the viability of artificial insemination just because these animals are under a lot of heat stress. So if I can build a new system that helps me to improve my pregnancy rate would be great as well, right? It's kind of a result of a system. I'm building a system that will help me to do better with my livestock when we are thinking about the environment that these animals are there. And that's again, if we can manage in a way that we do not allow the temperatures for these animals to go above 100, 101, we will be able to have really better pregnancy outcomes out of these systems. Because every time we have our animals here, and you can see in these there, with temperatures above 102, 103, we can get close to virtually zero pregnancy rate, because everything in terms of cow and bull related will not be working well. And in these circumstances, the importance of shade will be highly appreciated, right? We can have shades and we can make animals do much better in this condition. If we change a little bit the gears from the beef to the dairy livestock, it's not uncommon for us to find pictures like this, right? With animals with the whole tongue outside, open mouth, trying to ventilate at some point to find a better place to go. And that everything impacts milk production and reproductive aspects. Production and fertility will be gone quicker and quicker. And it causes a lot of issues to the animal, because under that kind of heat stress, the first thing that the animals will do is to stop to graze, stop to eat. So dry matter intake will be reduced. They will go into negative energy balance. The animals will not be productive at all. It's going to impact all of the hormones. It's going to impact estrus expression and quality of oocytes, which in the end of the day may result in a lot of subfertility or infertility in our animals. Good. So how understanding that it can be bad like this, and sometimes we are not taking care of these as we are supposed to be, knowing that there is a huge effect in fertility, affecting females and males from ovulations to sperm viability. So what can we do to protect our animals against temperature extremes, winds, and radiation, right? Because when we have the animals a little bit more protected, a little bit more sheltered, they will use better their metabolism energy. They will not need to be controlling that much body temperature. And every time you need to regulate your body temperature a lot, you may end up spending much more energy just to be alive, rather than spend that energy to produce a calf or to produce more beef or more milk for you. Every time you have our animals, well protected again with access to shade, they will have a better immune system. They will be able to deal better with any kind of disease and stress. And what we know is that if you have animals that have access to trees, for example, and under those trees, you may have up to less 80% radiation, and the temperature can have a difference in 14, 15 degrees Fahrenheit if you are under the tree or in the open pasture, getting direct radiation from the sun, right? So it's kind of a few points here that highlights to us the importance of taking care of all of it. And we will find data on the literature to support all of it. I found a few studies that were recently published that can share with you guys, that I want to share with you guys today. And here you can see the Black Globe High Humidity Index and the Heat Load Index. Those are two indexes we use to measure environmental benefits to animals. And you can see the black line is in a conventional rotational system, and the gray line is a silvopasture system. And you can see that the gray line is always below it, right? So we have a lower index in terms of black globe humidity, and we have lower numbers as well when we are talking about heat load index. It makes the silvopasture systems a system that we want to be there, right? John already mentioned that some of his students, some of them want to take samples on the silvopasture, while the other one are taking samples on the open pasture, right? We all want to be under the shade at some point. The same group of researchers here, they were evaluating as well the cortisol levels and the body weight effect when you were in the same both systems. in a single rotational grazing systems or under a silvopastoral system. And you can see again, cortisol levels were lower when we are in silvopasture systems, as well the body weight response. So the body weight was kept higher when we are in the silvopasture system. What exactly does it mean to us? It means that we have animals here in a much less stressed condition, and for that reason, they did not lose weight. They were able to use their energy instead of being just burning that energy to regulate body temperature. They were using that thing to keep themselves in a good way in the silvopasture system. So being steady with the body weight tells a lot to us. And if you understand a little bit about reproductive side, you see that the cows that were losing weight here, we have much less chance to get a new pregnancy and give you a new calf next year. So they kind of wrap up this study telling us that if you can reduce this temperature, if you can give this kind of shade to the animals, we will have overall lower heart rate, lower respiratory rate, lower rectal and body surface, lower cortisol levels. And everything put together will end up giving us a better dry matter intake, which will result in better daily gain performance, right? And good body weight. But also, when you go into the reproductive side, we can have a higher embryo recovery. So especially for high-value animals, having access to shade, that tells a lot to us. But not only in the heat side here, it's a problem. When we go into the cold side, silvopasture systems can also help us, right? So shelter from trees can offer thermal protection for livestock during the winter by reducing wind and by reducing precipitation reaching sheltering animals. So if you need to be outside in a snow day, you'd rather be in a shelter place, right? We'd rather be under a tree because everything will be a little bit better there. So both ways, if you are in a very heat stress situation or in a cold stress situation, having trees in the pastures will make livestock life a little bit easier. So good, animal welfare. But Bruno, how much does it can affect as well animal behavior? John already mentioned a little bit, and we have this other study here that I want to share with you guys. And they were measuring grazing, rumination, and idle activity in these animals in a silvopasture system. And they found out something that I think that is very interesting. The first thing was, to graze, to be able to fulfill the rooming, they spend like 80% of their time grazing in a sunny area because most of the pasture here was sunny and they have some shade, they have access to shade. So they were able to graze 20% of this time in a shady area. But in order to fulfill their requirements, they were grazing everywhere. However, when they were ruminating or in idle or just in social activities, you can see that they spend 85% of their time ruminating under the shade and 65% of the whole socialization activities that livestock you will have under the shade of the trees as well. What is the message here, right? And that's what I like to see when I'm looking at data like this. I think the main message here is cows are telling us that yes, if I don't have shade, well, if I need to graze, I'm going everywhere to get my rumen fulfilled. But as soon as I get it done, I will ruminate and I will do nothing under the shade of the tree so I can save some energy. I can do my best in this situation. Because cows are picky, right? They know what they are doing. They kind of evolved together with forage in the last few millennia. And knowing that, they will also use trees, if they have access to them, as fodder, as forage. And that's a video of one of the farmers I work in the semi-arid of Brazil. And in the semi-arid area, you have lack of forage for a few months of the year. So especially if you are working with silvopasture systems in regions where weather can be challenging and John already mentioned a little bit about this. The animals may be able to graze it as well, and silvopasture can bring to you a second source of feed in your system, especially if we are going through very different environmental situations. So great, I can improve reproductive aspects, I can improve animal welfare, either in the cold or in the heat stress. Animals will be grazing anywhere, but they will be ruminating under the shade. If they are in a situation that they need an extra forage, they will be looking for the trees to get something else. But the main thing as well is trees in silvopasture systems can produce products to increase enterprise diversification. I will be able to have a second business now, right? We were livestock farmers, now we were talking about forages, and now we are talking about trees. So we're kind of building layers in my system that will help me to make more money, to be able to be a little bit more profitable, and having the idea that I'm bringing sustainability to the whole thing. Yeah. So when I bring trees to the system, I need to think about other products that I can sell and other things that can be beneficiating myself. And then we will be start to go into a part that, okay, it's gonna bring that tree to the system. We're going to bring that tree to the system. It may bring value, but it may also bring a negative impact to livestock, because if I have too much, I may reduce the amount of forage I'm producing. And, if I have 100 cows now, if I start to add a lot of trees, I may not be able to have 100 cows. I may need to to go down a little bit, to go to 95, 90, 80, 70 cows. I don't know. It depends on how many trees do we want to have there. But finding this balance with I think that's, to me, is the main thing here in a silvopasture system. Because when we are trying to find that balance, we also need to remember that most of the conversation around the world nowadays is that livestock is responsible for almost 15% of the total global greenhouse gas emissions. And we need to find a way to work with sustainable strategies to mitigate this enteric methane that we have been emitting worldwide. And the beauty on this is we are starting to have new studies and new research that have been bringing that has been bringing up to us new numbers that will help us to work on this. So I really like this picture here that we can see, emissions from the soil, emissions from the crop, emissions from the animals, emissions from the tractors. But also, by adding trees, we can uptake carbon. We can bring it back to the system, and we can make the case to work with our livestock systems, trying to convince people that, yes, we are not destroying the whole world. We are not here just to get rid of everything and destroy the next generation. We do care about this. We do understand that we have emissions, but we do understand that we can mitigate them, and we can work better to do our best in terms of silvopasture systems. And that study here, it was published this year in 2024, brand new one. You can see that in this study, these researchers, they were working with livestock, silvopasture, crop livestock systems, and crop livestock forest systems. So the whole three components together. And they were evaluating the total greenhouse gas emissions, the total carbon sequestration, and the net carbon balance. And that's what I want you guys to pay attention with me. So yes, that we do have emissions, right? We are emitting there as we are producing. If we have animals, we are emitting carbon dioxide, we are emitting methane. But when we're thinking about the potential of carbon sequestration, and here you can see in the silvopasture system and in the crop livestock forest system, we have the two highest carbon sequestration, and it brings us a really nice balance here. And it puts the silvopasture system with the best net carbon balance. So I don't know if carbon credits and carbon markets going to be something in 20 years, but if it becomes, and if in 10 or 15 or 20 years, somebody, instead of being selling livestock or beef and milk, we need to be selling carbon, thinking about silvopasture systems right now may be a nice thing to have in your farm, and maybe in 20 years, the next generation of farmers will be in good shape. Good. I almost talked too much with you guys. I think that will be my main message when I'm talking in my 30,000 feet view here of the whole system. I want you guys to understand that I have environmental benefits. I can change a lot in terms of what I'm offering to my animals, in terms of animal welfare, in terms of animal behavior. We can make a better system. The point I want to go towards the end of my presentation right now is, okay, I like it, Bruno. I'm sold. How can I do this? Well, what should I think from now on? Okay. And that works for everything in life, right? Planning. Where you are and where you want to go. And you need to answer a few questions to yourself. What's your current situation? What you want for your system as a goal? And how can you get there? Because each of us has a different pace. Each of us has a different goal. And maybe the silvopasture system that you visit from your neighbor does not work for you because you have a different perspective of your system. So I like to say that when you're talking about silvopasture systems, you will find people with three different views. You will find people they just want ecosystem service. They are okay with it. They just want to put a few trees there, and whatever they get from that trees, they are happy with. You will find people that want to have a second source of income. So they want to add something to the system because they want to have another income, but they don't want to lose what they have right now. And then you'll find a third type of farmer that they want to add trees, and they are willing to replace some of what they are building in terms of livestock in trees, and they will allow the trees to take so much that the livestock may be a little bit lower in terms of revenues, but both together will give to them even better. And John already made it clear with you guys, right? So let's go through those three kinds of views here for silvopasture systems. In this first one, as I mentioned, Wells is working with silvopastures towards ecosystem service. I think the main thing here is to provide shade. I want to see my animals benefited of this shade and producing a little bit better. But we may also bring nitrogen fixation. We were discussing here a little bit. John already answered a few questions in the legume trees here. They may be bringing some nitrogen to our conversation. They may be helping us with soil chemical and soil physical characteristics. We may be, with trees, we'll be exploring soil layers that we'll never be exploring only with forests, right? We may have forests there a few feet down, but trees will be much deeper than the forest, bringing nutrients from down on the deep layers to the top layers again throughout the whole cycling that we have every year, especially with the trees that will put leaves down every winter, right? Trees will help us with water infiltration, to recharge the water we need in the soil. So I can live with a silvopasture system that will be focused on the ecosystem services. That will be bringing to me a lot of benefits. And just by adding them there and having shade, I will have all of the animal benefits that I already mentioned to you guys. And then we took pictures, for example, from this cow grazing in a pasture during the summertime. And you can see in the back of the cow, the temperature, especially in the black parts, it can go above 115 Fahrenheit. So would you rather to have your back with 116 Fahrenheit, or would you rather to be under the shade of a tree grazing the hottest part of the day? Okay, that's what you can see in terms of benefits to the animals. And if you look for the whole thing with this ecosystem services perspective, if you look at the same picture using the same thermal camera, you can see temperatures going from 85 here under the shade up to 132 in the bare ground. So that's a lot. That's really high. And it changes all the microorganisms in the soil. It will have a lot of effects in the whole microbiome we have in the soil, right? So if you want to have this ecosystem service perspective, all of these things will be there for you. And that's all of these will come more like a bonus. And I don't care much about what I'm going to do with that tree later on. I just wanted to have that tree there to help me to bring all of these benefits, mainly thinking about my animal. But I can move a little bit forward and say, no, I want to add income. And then I bring to you this picture here on your right. That's a farm of one of my friends in Florida. And in the back, you can see pecans is spaced far enough that you can have animals grazing there if you need. So when you think about adding income, you will have all of the ecosystem benefits as well. But the tree additions will not affect your forage production. You don't want to get rid of any of your cows. You just want to add trees that will bring to you everything good. But you may be able to harvest pecans and sell it, on Saturday when you go to your local fair. And it's going to bring another source of income to you. But again, cannot affect your livestock production. Good. What if you decide that you are okay with it? And yes, you can accept that you are going to replace some of it because you want to have so many trees there that the tree insertion may result in sufficient shading and competition that it's going to reduce your forage productivity, and consequently, you need to reduce your stocking rates. You can do this, but when you think about a silvopasture system, when we're replacing things, the tree revenue must be able to help you to pay for the losses you are having in the livestock system. So in this case, I will bring the same farm here. And you can see in your left side, just income addition. I want to keep big areas with pasture. I will keep my animals there. In your right side, much more trees, where you have the plus sign on here, much higher tree density. In this place, I don't care if I need to reduce a little bit my number of animals because I'm targeting to have tree benefits enough that it will help me to pay for the bills. Why do I like to have this kind of conversation with you guys? Because, you may want to just have ecosystem services. You may want to add income. You may want to replace that. You want to have more from the trees. And you will find farmers with all of these bills. And some of them, you may need to convince them in the very beginning to go through the ecosystem service. And then they may end up adding even more trees. And later on, they may be able to visualize the benefit of having two businesses instead of only one. Good. Hopefully you guys follow me up to this thing. 3 or 4 considerations here just before we finish and wrap it up. Okay? First one, everything comes from the sun, sunlight. That's what we need, right? To be able to get our ribeye or New York strip at the end of the day. In between, forage accumulation, intake, digestion, the whole livestock process here, where we are going to grow forage, where we are going to graze, where we are going to understand what's going on in the rumen, and then convert. The beauty of converting sunlight in ribeye, milk. All of this process will be there happening exactly like this in a silvopasture system. What is the difference here? We are putting a tree in between the sunlight and the pasture. And now we are creating a new barrier that are going to take some of this sunlight. And John already showed to you guys that some plants will be liking this, especially the cool season ones. But the warm season ones will be the ones saying, well, the more sun we have here, the better it will be for me, right? So what I want you to consider is every time you were adding that tree there, all of the other steps ahead, they will be impacted at some point, especially pretty close to the trees, especially in the place where you have the shade being projected over the pasture, right? And here, it will be very interesting to think about grazing management. It'll be very interesting to think that, having two pastures will be better than having only one, so I can have my cows going back and forth. Having three may be better than having only two. So when I'm using 1/3 of my pasture, the other 2/3 will be grazing, will be resting, and I'll be able to replace the energy. I'll be able to grow my forage when I'm using rotational grazing. If you are going to establish trees, having several paddocks may help you to move your trees around and maybe not come back to the one that you are planting trees for a while. And may be able to build your silvopasture systems, not only in a single year, but you are going to have a plan that every year you are going to kind of stockpile one pasture and do not graze that one because you are doing such a job there to establish your trees for a while. It may help you to also define your arrangements. How do you want to design your silvopasture systems? From a single pasture, an open pasture, can you just, plant a few trees there? Yes, you can. You may want strips. You may want to double strips, triple trees. You may want to have like squares of trees with small groves where you can fence them around. And every year you're going to put new ones. Because who else is working with trees and livestock? You're not getting out of the business next year, right? You didn't get into this to be done in 2 or 3 years. It's a long-term thing. We are talking about trees that will be there for 20, 30, 40 years for us. So you can do it every year a little bit and move your electric fence and maybe, have like a chess table like this. You may want to have groves and having 6, 7, 8, trees side by side and have a big slot there. And you know that under this area, you're not going to have too much forage, but the cows will be able to go back and forth from the open area to the tree area. Or you may decide that you're going to work all around it and you are going to have only close to the fence the trees you need. And I have been spending some time on Google trying to identify what kind of arrangements we have in the southern US. And I found those farms here and I want to share with you. Some of them, you can see that's a fence line and they have been leaving the trees behind there. Some of them, they have been just deciding to leave a few trees behind. And so you can have this more scattered pattern there where you have trees here and there. You may have farmers that they are doing both. Some of them, they will have, small groves like this. They may have here a source of water and they left a little bit more trees around here. So yes, we do have a lot of people trying to include trees already in our problems. And I would say that along the fence is the one I have been seeing the most, where we can deal better. You may just want to pull electric fence for a while there and make sure that you can protect these trees for a year, 2, 3, that you feel comfortable enough that you can release the animals. They are not going to mess up with everything. So you do. So think about all of these things and how you can handle it in the property. Bruno, can I crop it while I'm growing the trees? Yes, you can. Why not? If you have livestock systems and you need silage, for example, why don't you corn there for 2 or 3 years and then it became a silvopasture system? And then we can call it a agroforestry system for a while. Can I grow corn in the situation like this for 10, 20 years? No, you cannot. Well, yes, you can, but the impact of the shade will be so much that the corn will be not, with good yield and doesn't work. And the taller the trees are getting, you will start to see this kind of difference. I took these 4 pictures in the same day, in the same field. And the difference here is just how far the corn plant is from the tree. So 13 feet apart, 24, 36, and 15 feet away from the tree groves. The ones that were 15 feet away, 15 feet away from the grove, they were mature and ready to be harvested. And the ones here close to the trees, you can see is still green with a very small ear as well. So yes, there is an effect on the corn here, especially after 5, 6, 7 years. This one here was taken maybe in the 5th or the 6th year of the trees were there, trees very, very tall at this point. So in the first 2-3 years that you have small trees, it's easy. What is the biggest issue here? You need to take care of herbicide application. You may come here to spray herbicides in your corn, and you may kill all of your trees. So you got to take care of this. You got to be in a day without the wind, with all the protections we have for weed spray. Good. Can I hay it? Sure, you can. And maybe that's the best way to do in the first year or so. Instead of bringing animals here to graze, you put up hay. You have your bales there. You move everything out, and you sell hay, or you use hay for your own operation for a few days, okay? For a few years. So those are things that I would like to share with you all based on my experience with Silvopasture system. 2 things I want to share with you guys that you need to avoid when we are talking about Silvopasture systems. The first one is a single tree, right? You don't want to have a single tree and call it a Silvopasture system. You're going to have all of your animals hanging out there and killing all of the pastures below it. So avoid it. If you are going to leave the trees behind, don't leave one by itself. Put them spread around, scatter around. That's fine. And if you are planting a silvopasture like this here in your right side, study, the tree canopy. Be aware of the tree canopy. How much light can you make through this? It's going to help you to define how apart the trees needs to be. And this one here, this farmer didn't know how big the canopy tree could go. And they plant the trees close enough that 5-6 years later, the canopy was touching itself. And all the plants here were in trouble, especially because here we are talking about warm seasonal plants. So if you don't have light enough below that, your planted silvopasture may not be worked out, okay? Let's wrap up. What if we are talking about a woodland that you want to graze? I want you to take care of the tree density. I want you to think in the long term, what you have before, what you're going to have after. Pick the trees you want to leave behind and make a plan to figure out what are the ones you are going to get rid of, okay? So you can make your good tree density to be able to have your animals there. Meanwhile, forage enrichment in the understory to make sure that you have more and more forage in your woodland. And also, grazing management. I already mentioned, you got a rotational grazing that thing. You cannot leave the animals here and think that the forage that are already struggling with less light than the normal, they will be growing faster. No, they will be growing slower than they used to grow, right? So grazing management here is very, very important. You got to take care of it. If you were thinking about a planted silvopasture, that you are going to plant the trees, that you can design everything square in rows and groves or whatever, I want you to think again about grazing management and how you can set your rotational grazing in a way that you can set paddocks apart, that you can hay, that you can plant corn, that you can avoid grazing for a while you are growing your trees, especially here, right? That a tree can take years and years and years to be tall enough that we will be okay, that tree is there. And here I stole some numbers from Dr. Fike and the crew that has been working around here. We have been, suggesting that if you're talking about hardwood trees, you can plan to have around 30. And if you're talking about softwood trees, you can have 100, 120. You can have a little bit more. Again, consider the species, consider the canopy size, consider how much light you are taking from the sun and impacting it in terms of reducing the ability of your forage to grow. And prefer cool season forests, right? Because warm season plants will need much more sunlight than cool season forests. The efficiency will be better here under shade conditions for cool season forests. And then those would be the ones we would recommend to you guys to be targeting on. So, Liliane, again, thanks for having me here today.